Hey everybody, time for more totally accurate battle. Oh, no it's not. Forgot which channel I was. This is StoryBrain. In the Joker versus Joker vid, I mentioned that Heath Ledger's Joker is probably in the top 5 movie bad guys ever. I didn't go further with that, but let's do it now. I'll talk about some others that are really good within some of the measures we listed, and a few that are really close to being there. And this is an informal list that can change, because for one reason, time can change our emotional reactions. Alright, so, at number 5, let's start with the Xenomorphs from the Alien series. I think that that's an example of the power of science fiction as a whole, particularly the idea that they embodied. I mean, they're called Xenomorphs later on, but really, they have no name. They perfectly represent the concept that evolution can go an entirely different way. In some ways, you might say that people dominated Earth. Well, this is an example of the idea that a species could evolve to dominate a planet because they were so dangerous, so overwhelming just in the design of their bodies, and they could end up spreading like a plague. It's just fantastic, and I mean, that's the idea that's at the core of that story. There's also the nuts and bolts of how the creature works, the face hugging, of course, which is almost unthinkable. When you put all of that together, you have something fantastic. Now, of course, there is the element of the alien being a little too horrifying. It is so well fleshed out and so intelligently executed, though, that it's delightful just for that reason. But you almost don't want to let yourself believe it. So it's a little bit limited in terms of what it can do as horror. And also, I think there's a problem in that the alien isn't human. So there's a limit in terms of how much we can emotionally react to it. You know, when an animal is the antagonist of a movie, you can't really blame the animal for what it's doing. You can hope people get away, but that's really it. The whole idea of moral satisfaction, of it embodying bad traits, gets a little lost. That has to come totally from the hero. It's not like the alien can trap Ripley, then pull out a cigar and start making a speech where his arrogance lets her get away. So you can't really get all the way with that kind of character. But for what it is and what it does, it's absolutely fantastic, and definitely the alien is at least top 5 in the best villains ever. Now, for number 4, I'm going with Hannibal Lecter, from the Silence of the Lambs, Manhunter, and Red Dragon series. I'm sure everybody knows Hannibal, or at least everybody over a certain age does, and it's a bit interesting because Lecter is most known for Silence of the Lambs. But really, he was an actual villain properly in Manhunter, the movie that came before Silence, when he actually is a compliment to the hero, Will Graham, and helps to illustrate how good Will Graham is at his job, since Graham captured Lecter. By the time Silence rolls around, the whole movie is really just a massive put-over for Lecter. Everything is set up to make him look amazing, tougher, smarter, and more dangerous than everyone else in the movie, including Clarice, who he just mocks and manipulates, and even eventually in the later movies brainwashes. And okay, at the end of it, he gets out, and as an audience we like it, because he's shown to be the most resourceful person. But I don't think we really get into it since he's so screwed up in so many other ways. It's kind of a guilty pleasure. But the movie is so incredibly well made otherwise. Later on in the series, these worst parts kind of went overboard, getting ridiculously gross with people eating their own brains and whatnot, and the thing with Lecter owning Clarice, but that first movie shows how well drawn and used Lecter originally was as a character. Alright, from there, and this was a tough choice, I'm going to put in one of my personal favorites, Norman Bates, from Alfred Hitchcock's original Psycho. And there are a few key things about it that make it stand out to me. First, it blows my mind that that movie was made with a character with that amount of screwed upness in 1960. You know, that was the era of Dennis the Menace and Spartacus and Westerns. And maybe the movie's not perfectly real, but the depth of it, the dimension of it, the way they realized that character. I mean, when you read his biography, from the book also I suppose, it sounds like a case history of a real person. And of course, one of the strengths of Alfred Hitchcock is that he knew the point of what he was doing. He didn't overdo it, which is one reason why that shower scene became so iconic. Probably an underrated reason. It wasn't so horrifying that you didn't want to think about it. The same with the rest of the scenes with Bates himself. The adrenaline of it was accentuated, the bizarreness, the morbid fascination we had with him. All of that hits you the most without the gross stuff that would turn most of us off. And if I can just say this, I don't think enough people have fully appreciated how amazing that acting job was by Anthony Perkins. Well, by him in combination with Hitchcock directing him. When you watch that movie, if you remember, you actually have to be able to see it twice and to think two totally different things about Norman Bates. First, you're supposed to think he's just a walk-on character, a little bit awkward, who is only going to be in a scene or two. You know, Janet Leigh is supposed to be the star. Of course, the movie is called Psycho, so I don't know how people were supposed to not notice that, but you don't know that the psycho is Norman. It's not until you watch it again, this time keeping an eye on Norman himself, that you can study him to see how screwed up he is. Because really, he's pretending to be normal, and he's going through that psychological thing where he likes Janet Leigh's character, while his other personality is getting threatened by her. And it works. You can see it happening. The way he looks at her, the way he reacts to certain things she says, all of it. It's just amazing. And of course, he wasn't even nominated for an Oscar. But I have my ideas about that. It's a different topic. But on the other side of the coin, Bates also has a similar situation where he doesn't have a counterpart. Part of the impression he makes is that he kills the hero outright. So we end up limited again. But his impression is still unforgettable. Now, another one I need to put in here that might be a little underrated is Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. One of the most believable villain characters you will ever see, which really is the strength of that movie as a whole. She manages to seem like a real nurse at a mental hospital while being just controlling enough, just unlikable enough that you start to hate her. And she is the one who lets Jack Nicholson's character be as rebellious as he is in that movie. And all the dynamics of that story do not happen without Nurse Ratched. And you don't usually see a great hero and a great villain paired off like that. Usually one dominates the other. But a lot of what she does only works for a certain portion of the audience. Younger people just won't pick up on the subtleties of it, which unfortunately does matter. So, okay, that's 4, and counting Ledger's Joker we get to 5. And this kind of ends up being a top 6, so sue me. But anyway, based on what we talked about in the video, I actually think the Heath Ledger Joker works better as a villain than each of these characters. In terms of what he represents in the movie, the fact that he does have a functioning hero, the external emotions involved, and the way he works for people of a bunch of different ages, which means that he is going to be either number 2 or number 1 on my list of the best villains. In movies I've seen, that is, but I have seen a lot. But that actually leaves one more villain to be in that number 2 or number 1 slot, who I haven't mentioned. But before I do, let me quickly do some honorable mentions. People not at the very top who may be in the top 10 or top 20. Characters like the T-800 from the Terminator series, Magneto from the X-Men, Venom from the Spider-Man comics, and John Doe from Seven. Each of them has a fascinating set of strengths and weaknesses that maybe we'll talk about later. But bringing us back to the top of the list, there is one guy whose name I haven't said yet, who probably edges out Heath Ledger. Maybe it's a bit anticlimactic, but it's Darth Vader. We're talking about the ability to appeal to different demographics, the look and design of the character, as visually striking and intimidating in the right way as you could imagine. The dimension of the character too, which you didn't even really need the prequels to show. And the ideas involved, and the way he ends up dying, the lightsaber, the merchandising, the personal depth and large scale of what he was involved in. I mean, it's all there. He doesn't have the external emotions as much as Ledger's Joker does, really, but he's become so iconic as the face of a franchise that redefined movies over multiple films that he's still competitive there. And a lot of the actual nuts and bolts of Star Wars are something we're going to get into a bit more in these next few months until Rogue One comes out, with Darth Vader in it, of course. But in the meantime, I think it's enough to say that if Heath Ledger's Joker isn't the best villain ever, then Darth Vader definitely is. That's all for now, and thanks.